Could I ask you to remain standing whilst my chaplain delivers a prayer for us?
Let us pray.
Thank you, Julie. Can't do this. Good evening. Ooh. It's a bit loud. Good evening, fellow councillors, and welcome to members of the public. Sorry, it's a new sound system tonight, so you'll have to bear with me while we get used to it. Do any members have any personal or prejudicial interests to declare at our meeting tonight? No. Thank you. I would like to propose from the chair that the minutes of the previous meetings held on the 15th of May be confirmed as a correct record.
And I'm happy to second those.
Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Mayor's announcements, I've got it written somewhere. I seem to have been very busy for the last month. I've been to quite a few events in the last month, all of which have been really pleasant, including Buckingham Palace Garden Party last Thursday, and it wasn't anything I did that caused poor Prince Philip to end up in hospital straight after, honestly. The sun has shone on everything, on us at everything that we've done until today. I hope that's not an omen. We are organising some events in the near future for the mayoral charities, hopefully some coffee mornings, and Councillor Heather Speak has kindly offered to host a garden party on the 10th of August at her home. Please watch your emails for details of all the events. We'd be very grateful for any support you can offer. Finally, it's my Civic Sunday at faraway but lovely sunny Christchurch, Wesham, next Sunday the 16th of June. The parade leaves the PCT car park on Derby Road at 10 a.m, not 10:30 as it says in the newspaper tonight, and we'll be pleased to welcome all who can join us. Refreshments will be served in the community centre afterwards, and we've upgraded to homemade cakes this year. Freckleton Band will also be playing, so it should be a pleasant event. So I hope some of you will be able to make it. Thank you. Chief Executive's announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are trying a new sound system tonight, and the good news is it will be extended to all councillors at the next meeting. There's a roving mic for those councillors that don't currently have the new units, so bear with us. We have run tests on it, with the cabinet members and the mayor. And a new layout is being tried. We've been asked to try a new layout. If you've any feedback on it, pass it through to the committee services team, and we're happy to adjust it accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Standing Order 12.1 of our Constitution states that the purpose of the rules of debate is to make sure that the Council makes informed decisions after giving adequate consideration to alternative choices. I'm firmly of the opinion that our current rules of debate, they don't always achieve that. Under Part 4 of our Constitution, Standing Order number 11.2, paragraph 13, subparagraph 13, that allows for a motion to suspend specific procedure rules to be moved at any time. I wish to move such a motion as follows. That Standing Orders 12.5, 12.7d, 12.8, 12.10, subparagraphs 2 to 5, and 12.11 be suspended for the remainder of this meeting to allow full and open exchange of views in relation to item 7 on the agenda. That's the wording of the motion, but the combined effect of the suspension of these specific standing orders will be allowed to allow members to speak more than once on motions or amendments, and to prevent members using a procedural motion to prematurely cut the debate short. It will also allow members to ask questions and receive answers during the course of their speech. In other words, we can have a proper debate as opposed to a series of speeches. Just in case anybody's worried that means that we could be here indefinitely, it is worth remembering that under Standing Order 18.3, the Mayor may propose that a member who deliberately obstructs business or persistently disregards her ruling be not heard further. Standing Order 18.4 also enables the Mayor to propose that a member leaves the meeting if he continues to behave improperly. Now, item 7 is the only item on the agenda for tonight for debate. It's one of the most important items that we're going to get to debate this year. It'll set the ball rolling on decisions that will affect every resident of Fylde for the next 17 years and beyond. It's our responsibility to ensure that we have a full and proper debate. That's what we're here for. If that's not what you're here for, then I don't know what you're here for, basically. We should be having a proper debate, and suspension of these rules will allow that. I do have a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to second that proposition, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now have to take...
There's no rules of debate apply now. We can debate this motion before voting on it.
Okay, yes. So, does anybody have any comments to make on this before we take the vote? Thank you, Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a problem with Fylde's constitution when it comes to council meetings. The constitution has been developed over a number of years. There's adequate time for people to speak in debate. If you can't get your point over in one speech, as far as I'm concerned, it's a poor do. This isn't the time to change the constitution of the council. The time to change the constitution of the council is through the correct procedure, either it be the Overview Scrutiny Committee or through the Cabinet, not tonight on the hoof. And I would respectfully suggest that we'll leave the constitution as it is and have a proper debate in line with our constitution, which has been written and thought about over a number of years. And I've managed to get my points across in debate in full council over the last 20 years. And I don't see any different this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Can I just remind you that this is in fact in our constitution, that we have the ability to waive standing orders. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In view of that comment, which was negative to the proposal, I would say that in view of the importance of this issue, it's vital that we know exactly which side everybody's bread is buttered on. I think we must have, on this motion, a recorded vote, so the members of the public, our residents, will know just which members want a democratic debate and which ones don't. So I would call for a recorded vote, and I believe, do I need 5 other people?
5
I'm
members.
quite sure I can have 5 members to support that. I think that's
Clearly there are 5. Thank you.
Councillor Davis is saying that we don't have democratic discussions in full council. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I wasn't saying that we never have democratic votes or democratic comments. The point I was making is an issue as complex as this. Councillor Ashton says that when you get up and you can speak once, you can manage to get across your points. There will be things arising during the debate that will trigger other comments from people, and if you've spoken once, that'll be it. The point of Councillor Duffy's amendment, proposal is that we'll be able to come back in and make the points relevant at the time. It's too complex an issue to be able to say you've got 10 minutes, get it off your chest and shut up. So I wasn't suggesting that we don't have democratic vote. I was just thinking that the process wouldn't work tonight with an issue like this.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Fylde.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to draw attention to the council to the fact that this is not a council meeting where policy is being adopted. This is is it critical? It's a meeting whereby we have a document before us. We are being asked to endorse it for the purposes of consultation. The authority of this council doesn't go as far as making serious amendments to that document. That will eventually come. So I am very much aware of the sentiment of the proposal by Councillor Duffy. And at times I feel that the new constitution doesn't and does exclude and is a sterile document that prevents what we used to have many years ago, a proper debate. All I can say, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, I don't think this evening is as critical as some may feel, and in my usual manner, I am sure I will be far more flexible when it comes to answering questions in the formal debate.
Thank you, Councillor Fylde. Does anybody else wish to speak? Yep.
Thank you. I mean, I realise that what we have at the minute is democratic. I really can't understand Councillor Ashton's comments about sticking within the Constitution. As the Mayor's pointed out, this is part of our Constitution. It's specifically in there, and all I'm doing is using the Constitution to try and make this a more productive meeting. It's the only item that we've got on tonight. If there's going to be the normal form of debate, which is people just standing up and saying something and sitting down again, not being allowed to speak again, not being able to respond, then, to be honest, I don't really see the point in coming here tonight. Let's have a proper debate about it. Not as Councillor Fylde says, it's not something where we're going to change a whole lot, but it's an opportunity for questions to be asked and answers to be got, so that every councillor here, on behalf of the residents that they represent, has a better idea of what is in this document.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. We'll move to the vote now, which will be a recorded vote.
Okay, if members could indicate if they're either for, against or abstaining. Sorry? For suspending standing orders. Beg your pardon. The Mayor?
For.
Councillor Silverwood?
For.
Councillor Ackers? Again. Councillor Aitken? Councillor Ackroyd? Councillor Andrews? Again. Councillor Armitt? Councillor Ashton. Sorry, Tim Ashton. Councillor Beckett. Councillor Brickles. Councillor Chedd. Councillor Chew. Councillor Clayton. Councillor Craig Wilson. Councillor John Davis. Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Duffy. Councillor Easton. Councillor Eaves. Councillor Fazakerley. Councillor Fylde. Councillor Ford. Councillor Goodman. Councillor Goodrich. Councillor Harper. Councillor Henshaw. Howard Henshaw, sorry, 4. Councillor Karen Henshaw. Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Hopwood. Councillor Jakes. Councillor Little. Councillor Barbara Nash. Councillor Edward Nash. Councillor Odes. Councillor Pounder. Councillor Presswich. Councillor Redcliffe. Councillor Rigby. Councillor Singleton. Not here. Councillor Speak. Councillor Threlfall. And Councillor Wilder. That's 20 in favour of those standing orders being suspended and 19 against. So it succeeds.
Thank you. Right, if we can just deal with the other 2 items on the agenda. Agenda item 5. Questions from members of the council. There are no questions from councillors this evening. And item 6, questions from members of the public. There are no questions from members of the public. Yeah. So we'll start the debate, which won't be as normal, so we'll see how it goes. But first of all, I would like to ask Councillor Trevor Fylde to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe you're in charge for the very first time of a rather wicked machine that you can press a button and stop in full flow.
Would you like me to do it now?
Well, I was going to say, if you want to try it out, then I'll be your guinea pig. And I'm coughing and spluttering, so you might want to do that anyway.
Have no doubt, I will.
But before I make a brief introduction to the agenda paper, can I just draw attention of the council to 2 errors that's before us. The first error, which is on page 62 of your preferred adoption document, there's a table there which makes reference that there are 20 hectares of employment land at Doorbridge Kirkham. This, I am sure, will be pleasant to most people, is an error, and that has to be deleted. And the second correction which I want to draw council attention to is paragraph 3.4, which is on page 5 of your order paper. And it refers to part of the consultation process where it states that Mark Evans will make a presentation to the parish forum with regard to the consultation. Unfortunately, that is not the case because the meeting of the forum is in September after the conclusion.
Councillor Fylde, can I just stop you? I've got an indication that we can't hear you.
Would it be, do I have your permission to sit down, and then that may be...
I don't know. Well, go on.
Seeing as you're not sympathetic to my gout, I'll... Right.
Sorry, would you want that to be repeated, Councillor Andrews? Yes. So if you could start again, Councillor Fylde, I'm sorry.
The two corrections, is that better for... The two corrections are one, page 62 of the preferred option report, and on page 62 there is a table which identifies Dalbridge in Kirkham supplying 20 hectares of employment land. That is a mistake and has to be deleted. And the second error is paragraph 3.4, which is on page 5 of your order paper. And this refers to the fact that Mark Evans would make a presentation to the parish forum, but this cannot go ahead because the next meeting of the parish forum is in September, which is after the conclusion of the consultation period. Is that clear?
Sorry, Councillor Fylde, as we're in not a normal debate, can I just ask, is it not possible that the parish forum could have a special meeting for that?
I think you'll find that when we come to the debate on the consultation process, I am totally flexible, and if it's the wishes of this council that you can try and organise a meeting of the forum within the consultation period, or indeed, provided it doesn't extend the consultation period too long, to extend the consultation period to accommodate that sort of meeting.
Thank you. Would you like to carry on with your presentation?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for the benefit of members of the council, it's always very difficult talking about planning issues through a council, where some members of the council are members of the planning committee, and others find planning a rather bemusing subject to try and appreciate. And just to remind those members who are not familiar with planning issues, the local plan that we are talking about and is the subject of this evening's deliberation has evolved from the local development framework, the LDF. And this was introduced by the last government with a simple intention of speeding up the local plan process. Previously, authorities like Fylde used to take something like 5 years to deliver its local plan. So this was set up to, it was introduced in 2004. To date, 50% of all councils still do not have a local plan in place, so we can appreciate so much for speeding up the process, but that's by the way. However, the aims and objectives of the LDF local plan is to describe the needs of Fylde needs in terms of the usual education, employment, retail, transport, housing, etc. to the year 2030. And these needs are described in the 15 chapters of the preferred options document before you this evening. And it's very important to realise that the government insists that the chapter summaries are evidence-based, often requiring the input from specialist outside consultants. And furthermore, the government even prescribes the methodology by which evidence is accrued. Obviously, this makes it very difficult for lay people, including councillors, to make significant changes. Simply put, for a subject to be unpopular is not grounds for change or deletion. All of the 15 theme chapters have been reviewed and endorsed by the LDF steering group, which then allowed an issues and options document to go out to public consultation in the autumn of last year. The results of that consultation have been used to inform the draft preferred options document before you this evening. Again, this has been agreed by a majority of the steering group in April of this year. The only area of contention was Chapter 7, Strategic Locations for Development. I am aware that there are ward councillors present this evening who disagree with the agreed housing land allocations within this evening's report. And I know that some seek an opportunity to amend. However, can I just emphasise very strongly, 1, if Council chooses to amend this evening, the amendments are not binding on the portfolio holder. 2, any significant amendment would have to be subject to a full sustainability assessment. This would lead to serious delay and prolong our vulnerability to planning decisions which are now and could be made by appeal. I think it is obvious to most that this preferred option should only be changed through the consultation process, and there will be full public consultation on it. I encourage councillors, parish and town councils, and especially ward members so affected to make comment and participate in that consultation. If consultation responses provide sound planning reasons why the plan should be amended, this can be achieved when the plan is redrafted after that consultation. The publication of the plan will come back to the portfolio holder, to the steering group and full council, prior to the final consultation on soundness. Mr Mayor, it would be wrong to deny members of the council and the public the opportunity to comment on the plan in its current form. The arrangements and timetable for consultation form part of tonight's agenda. Mr Mayor, may I formally propose the 2 recommendations on the order paper. Recommendation 1, that Council is recommended to endorse the Fylde local plan to 2030. Part 1, preferred options for public consultation. And recommendation 2, Council is recommended to agree the consultation and arrangements set out in this report. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fylde. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I stand to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Reeve. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Clayton.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. In your comment there, Councillor Fylde, you referred to full consultation will be made, and you also referred to on the sound planning reasons. My question is, how will you differentiate on the results between what I would describe as layman speak and the alternative planning speak, those comments, and will there be any weight given to collective parish and town council responses? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Oh, it's a question. We got an answer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think the second part of the question is, can you add additional weight if there is a collective, i.e. a response from the town council, rather than an individual? And I think the simple answer to that, it isn't the weight of the response, it's the quality of response. And I think members of the planning committee, and those members who have been members of the planning committee, appreciate the similarities between when the Fylde Borough, the local planning authority, consults town and parish councils for their views on any particular planning application. And they are much aware that unless the parish or town council uses planning reasons for their observations, then the local planning authority are obliged legally to ignore their comments. So that's the answer to the second one. The first part of the question is far more difficult, and it's extremely difficult to explain to ordinary residents and lay people the complexities of what planning is all about. And it seems a reasonable scenario where you ask people their views, and we'll take whatever the housing site in any particular parish, and people will say it's foolish, it's stupid, we don't need any additional houses, and I'm against such a development. But unfortunately, and this is where the deceit really comes in, because when the government describe consultation, it isn't simple consultation. It isn't simply an exercise trying to find people's views. The government is saying, unless you understand the planning process, and I did make a reference before, that any major change to the preferred option that's before you this evening, that would have to go, if it's a significant amendment, it would have to go for the full sustainable appraisal. This is a statutory, technical piece of work that has to be done. And if you went to somebody, one of your residents, and says, do you understand the context of sustainable assessment? He'd look at you and say, no, I don't. But unfortunately, when the local plan finally comes in front of an inspector, if you haven't followed the rules as a planning authority, irrespective of what input you've had from your local residents, that inspector will deem your local plan to be unsound. And if it's deemed to be unsound, then you will probably delay the entire process by something between 6 and 9 months. So I sympathise with your question. I have a lot of sympathy with the concept of consultation seems to be simple. In reality, it's not.
Thank you, Councillor Fylde. Do you want to come back, Councillor Clayton?
Not at this stage, Mr. Mayor. I think when we move back into full council and not where we are at the moment, I have a proposition I wish to put forward, but perhaps it would be appropriate a little later in the proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to give notice that I would like to move 3 amendments. Do you wish to take the amendments now or at the conclusion of Councillor Fylde's introduction, as he finished totally on his introduction?
No, I finished.
Right, that's fine. That's fine. Right, on chapters 6, 7 and 9, employment land, housing need and housing numbers. We believe that the evidence base is in part flawed in relation to the housing need numbers, the housing numbers and employment land assessments, and therefore cannot be relied upon. We move that these 3 areas should be reassessed and corrected. The Fylde employment land and premises study documentation does not appear to have gone out to public consultation, is not appended to this plan, and there's not even a link to the study within the plan that we can find, and we believe that there should be. And that's the first amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rose.
I'm happy to second that amendment, and I'll reserve my right to speak later in the debate.
Sorry. Does anybody wish to speak to that amendment?
Can I be clear? Is the amendment simply on employment land? The first amendment.
Councillor Rhodes.
The amendment mostly refers to employment land. However, it would impact on housing need and also housing numbers if, as we believe, the figures are corrected and it would free up more land, employment land for housing.
Thank you. Councillor Fylde.
The point Councillor Oates makes about employment land, and I think within your document this evening, there's a reference made that the borough requires 49 hectares of new employment land. And that figure came out of an employment study. A firm of consultants was taken on by Fylde. Their conclusions went to the LDF steering group. It was debated and accepted and endorsed by that particular group. So I can't quite appreciate the comment that there's no recognition or no understanding of how this was arrived at. And that document did go out to public consultation, as all the chapters within this preferred option document have done, independently of the exercise this evening. The second part of your amendment, housing numbers and housing requirement, this is an issue which has dogged our planning committee for a considerable amount of time, and one can sympathise with and understand why it has. We, and I think it's been made known on numerous occasions to the members of the planning committee, that the housing requirement in terms of numbers has been described as the RSS figure of 306 houses per year. But because of the historic delivery and the lack of delivery in terms of what was expected under the RSS, the figure of 306 houses per year increased to 341. The RSS has been abolished, and I think it was abolished some 2 weeks ago. But government guidance now tells us that we've got to continue to use the RSS figures until we at Fylde have determined our own housing numbers. First, and early indications from the methodology that the government are asking us to use in determining housing requirement based on the ONS data, that would give us a figure of 373 houses per year, which isn't in any significant way different to the 341 under the RSS figure. But what members of this council probably don't realise, it's only because we are preoccupied with the 5-year supplied figures in planning, that this figure, while it seems an enormous figure and a large figure to many, I just want to remind members that in the period 1992 to 2006, the figure that County Council, who were then the statutory planning authority, dictated that Fylde deliver 347 houses per year. We seem to have forgotten that that was the case and only appreciate the new housing figures associated with the RSS as if it is something totally strange and alien to Fylde. For the last 20, 30 years, Fylde has been obliged to build that type of housing. So I don't think there's any way that you could have a meaningful debate to use in terms of coming to a figure that varies from the ones I have just discussed. You come against the brick wall that the government is saying that you've got to use the ONS statistics to come to a conclusion, and that in itself gives you a figure of 373. And the third part of the amendment is what, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Oates, do you want to come back and clarify?
Yeah, I think that Councillor Fylde has misunderstood the amendment. The point I'm making is that he says that the figures have been endorsed. Well, I don't agree that they were, because they were questioned. The minutes were done and the minutes were questioned on several occasions. The point I'm making is that I believe that the housing need figures were flawed because of the information that was used, and that there was errors in the information used, and that's been carried through the plan, and that is where I'm coming from. Because I think there is a flaw in that figure, I think that flaw has carried through to an oversupply of housing land, and if there is an oversupply of housing land, then that would free up that housing land for other purposes, including housing.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Oates is completely and totally wrong. when, if you recall, this council met as a body and agreed unanimously to, for myself to go down to Westminster and talk to the planning officer about issues around housing requirements and the 5-year supply. We got an indication from the planning minister that we would have a visit by the senior member of the planning inspectorate. That visit occurred, and the planning inspectorate had reviewed our housing requirement in terms of housing numbers and gave a definitive, unequivocal reply that the figures that the inspectorate would pay attention to when determining things like the 5-year supply would be the RSS figure of 306 plus the 20% because of non-delivery and the historic aspect that goes back to 2003, giving a total of 341. So I don't agree with Councillor Oates that the original figure was flawed, and that gives a weakness to the document in terms of Chapter 6.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. Just to make it clear, as I understand Councillor Oates' amendment, she's not querying the housing numbers. She's not querying the number of 376 or 341 or whatever it happens to be. She's querying the employment land study and saying that the study was flawed and we don't really need as much employment land as was identified in that study. That if we went with what we think is the correct figure for employment land, that land could be freed up to be used to satisfy and build houses to meet the figure that you quite rightly say is 300 and whatever. So it's the employment land amount that is in question and not the figure, the housing figure, the housing number.
Well, again, Mr. Mayor, repeating myself, the chapter on employment land was debated by the steering group. The steering group were made aware of the fact that Fylde Borough, in addition to identifying its own needs in terms of additional employment land, whether you question that or not, that was a statement made, a summary made in that report, which was endorsed and accepted by the steering group. In addition to our Fylde's own needs, the new concept of the duty to cooperate has started to take additional significance. And we, as a local planning authority, in the development of our local plan, have to put an extortionately heavy weight to the fact that Blackpool cannot demonstrate in their own local plan sufficient employment land that they require. And under this title, duty to cooperate, and you might feel that it is a rather nebulous sort of superficial aspect, regrettably, it is now taking on a significance which is extremely important. And we are morally obliged and legally obliged, and we would be certainly picked up by a local planning inspector if we didn't take recognition of that 15 hectares of land that would satisfy Blackpool's needs. I know it seems to be, we're not playing the game, and if you'd have mentioned that 3 or 4 years ago when we were dealing with the multiple area agreement where Blackpool were trying to pinch our lands for their own good, we would have thrown it away, thrown it into the dustbin immediately. But I can't overemphasize the fact that this concept of a duty to cooperate with our neighbours in areas, not simply employment land, highways, transport and housing, is a very significant and important one.
Councillor Fylde, I appreciate all that you've said, but I do believe, and part of this amendment is, that this did not go out to public consultation, and we feel that it's possibly flawed and it did not go out to public consultation.
I have given you my view. I said that following the debate with the steering group, that that chapter did go out to public consultation, but I am willing, with your permission, Mr. Mayor, to ask Julie Glaister, who's sat at the back of the room, if she wants to add to that answer I've given.
Thank you. Could you do that? Glaister.
We didn't have the employment study when we wrote the last version of the document that did go out for consultation, but we haven't put any of the evidence base for the local plan out for consultation. That's not the procedure that we follow. We take it through the local plan steering group. When the steering group have approved it, we put it on the website. So there is an area relating to this document on the council's website where all the evidence base is set out, and it doesn't go on there until it's been approved by the steering group, but none of it has been out for public consultation. So I'd just like to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
I just think this whole amendment is being totally misunderstood. The original error is a mathematical error which was in Grimley, which is what all our housing, our employment land has been based on, and that is where the flaw comes in. It can't be dealt with tonight, which is why I've moved the amendment I have, asking that it be looked at again whilst it's going out to consultation. I do believe there's a mathematical error, which is a flaw, which has come at the very beginning of the plan because of something within Grimley, which is what our employment land plan was based on. And that is the point I'm making here. If it's proved that there is a mathematical error, then that will mean that irrespective of the duty to cooperate, we will still have an oversupply of employment land, which in turn would mean that if that was the case, we would have surplus land to provide housing on. And that's all I'm asking for us to look at in this amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the point, and perhaps been slow to coming to a conclusion, but when Councillor Rhodes talks about Grimley, again, can I make reference to Julie Glaister? But Grimley was the first of an employment study, but that's been superseded by new consultants who were the authors of the employment chapter in this current plan. Can I just confirm that?
Yes, you are correct, Councillor Fylde, but the Grimley report was then superseded by the, if you'll bear with me a second, I have all the information here. It was then superseded by the Fylde Sub-Regional Employment Land Review, which also based the findings on the same error within the Grimley report. And then the third report was from the ACOM BE study, and that was in 2012. There were 7 models in that, 6 of which carried forward the error in the Grimley report.